Well, hello, folks. I am Dave.
And I am Sean.
Welcome to Barstools and Bandtalk. Oh my God, we have a great treat tonight. I'm going to let Sean bring him in because it's his birthday. But quite honestly, this is one of the biggest names in Canadian rock history, in the world rock history. And not just rock, but we can't wait to hear the whole story. Go ahead, Sean, bring him on because he's got a busy night tonight.
He does, and he wants to watch the Blue Jays. We want to make sure that we respect his time, as we always respect every guest's time. But Canadian icon, we'd be underselling it. And I'm going to go into this with him. I was introduced to this gentleman when CJCH used to be on the AM dial. We used to wait for Say Goodbye to come on at typically 11 o'clock at night, and got to know this band and this man and one of the iconic voices, one of the iconic players, Mr. Rik Emmett. And we are very happy to have him here.
Super happy. And he should be here at about now. Hi, Rik.
Hey.
All right. So I said before we started recording, I want to test your memory. Where were you when the Blue Jays won the first World Series in 1992?
I was in the Misty Moon on stage, literally playing when they got that out. Yes.
I know that because my band was opening for you at the Misty Moon.
Oh, is that right?
And what was cool about it, they went into extra innings, if you remember, and everybody's going, Rick's not going to want to go on. And you went on, and you stopped, and it was so awesome. I think you played past the normal. It was. I just remember that for me being, that was a JFK moment for me. I'm opening for Rik Emmett. I'm watching the Jays win the World Series, and it was just so cool.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day. We were remembering the two plays, and I said, no, I was in the Misty Moon in Halifax for the first one. The second one, I was in my cousin's basement, and when Carter hit the home run, I leaped from the couch, but it was a low basement, and it had that popcorn kind of, and I smashed my knuckles into the ceiling, and I was going, oh, geez, So I'll never forget either one of them.
Well, and I got one more touch point for you because a gentleman that I got to know actually through opening for you was Marty Anderson. I got to know him really well, and I lived in Toronto. Wonderful human being. And I said to Marty, I said, Rik Emmett's one of the most gracious guys I ever met in my life, because that same night I was backstage talking about how I went to see you guys playing the Thunder 7 tour, and I called it the Power 7 tour. And a couple too many pops, and you were such a nice man. And all my buddies were like, you just insulted Rik Emmett. And it's like, well, I didn't mean to. But anyway, Marty and I have a laugh about that all the time. So
I was just out to dinner with him about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, Marty. And he's doing great. He started up that sound and light business of his, and it grew to a point when they sold it out. And he now owns a house in Florida on a golf course.
Nice.
He's a member at Devil's Pulpit, and Marty's living the good life now.
That is so
Couldn't
awesome.
happen to a nicer fella. Couldn't happen to a nicer fella.
So I have a rumor that you've retired now. Is that true from touring? Are you done touring now, Rik?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no more going out on the road and playing chess. I mean, of course, nobody's going out on the road right now, right? Mm-hmm. So there is that. But no, I'd hung it up at the beginning of 2019, and I'd said, okay, when 2020 rolls around, I'll try and I told my agent, ones that I could drive to, maybe those kind where they interview you and you only have to play maybe 2 or 3 songs.
Right.
And then COVID knocked the bottom out of everything. So I don't know. I have to go at the end of the month. There's a theater in Hamilton, Ontario that's they're really struggling to try and keep afloat. So they asked if I'd come and sing and play a few things that they'll film and I guess put on a Zoom thing like this, or I don't know, just to try and raise some money. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that for you. So we'll see how that goes, I don't think I can. The big thing is I don't think I can sing anymore the way that I used to. certainly can't hit the high notes.
Well, whoever could, Rik? Whoever could? Oh my God, your range is incredible.
Yeah, well, it ain't anymore, you know. So, yeah, you know. So I mean, there's artful ways to get around that. You know, you can move melodies around a little bit. I tune my guitars down now a half step, you know, so that I don't necessarily have to be in concert pitch. But and some songs you just have to change the keys outright. Like Fight the Good Fight used to be in D minor. It's moved from D minor to B minor. It's come down an entire third. So, you know, yeah, but it's more the thing of, can you make it last for, like, we used to do soft cedars and we'd do 245s. So that's 90 minutes of work, and I have a hard time getting through 15 minutes of interview.
God love you, man.
Yeah, I think you've earned the right though, because I obviously this COVID thing, you're on a lot of YouTube, and found the Much Music concert from Halifax in January of, was it
87?
Is it 87?
Yeah.
Which I was at, and I mean, you guys were just super tight, but I mean, like, you didn't miss a note, you didn't cack, you were just spot on the whole night.
Well, we'd added Rick Sanders to the band for, and that really helped. There was a guy there that it was like he could sing in tune, and he was a good singer, strong singer. So the harmonies were always solid,
Yeah.
Like in the earlier days of Triumph, they weren't always, sometimes they were sketchy. So, and keyboards and that backing guitar. So it made it so that there was it was just easier for me to perform on those tours with Rico. Yeah. We had to call him Rico because he was a Rik, and so you couldn't have two Riks.
Too many Riks.
Yeah.
Do you have any regrets about maybe not going 4-piece from the get-go, Rik, or were you happy doing the 3-piece all along? Or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously the basic concept that Gil and Mike had when they started was, it's going to be a power trio. We got to find the right guitar player. And I had been in a trio before I was in Triumph, so it wasn't like I wasn't used to the idea of that kind of pretty sparse situation where there was a lot of responsibility on the guitar player to have to carry it. You had to give, all the harmony as well as all of the lead and stuff. So I didn't mind it. I liked it. I grew tired of it. We did the Just a Game album around 78, 79. And when we toured on that, like, we couldn't do songs like Hold On. Like, the trio, they just couldn't carry stuff like that. That had so many overdubs and stuff. I mean, I'd really sort of Jimmy Paged that up with a lot of guitar layering, and we had, chick background singers, and, there was a lot of stuff. So, I was starting to feel like, geez, by the time we got to about 84, 85, I had started lobbying the guys, saying, come on, we should add somebody so that, musically we can sort of have a little bit more, I don't know, texture,
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. But, I've been asked this kind of question before. Sometimes playing a gig solo is really cool, and it's very challenging because, you're naked. It's, it's going to be a real challenge. A duo is nice because you're just playing off one guy. Well, I did a cross-Canada tour when I was in a trio with Oscar Lopez and Pavlo, and it was like this guitar thing. And I was really more like, the guitar role that I had was more like being the drummer and the bass guitar. Like, I had to carry the rhythm. The other two guys were more like lead players, and I was more like the rhythm section. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun to do, So, I mean, when I left Triumph, I went a little overboard, and I had a female sax player, I had keys, I had another guitarist. It was a lot of mouths to feed. It was a lot of per diem.
Yeah, a lot of per diems.
But, I definitely felt like, okay, now I've gone as far the other way as I would want to, which is not to say that I didn't end up later in life playing with orchestras and, doing that kind of stuff too. But
Well, you
You
probably
know.
had a sound in your head, I'm sure, you know, and it would be hard not to compare Triumph to Rush. But Rush wasn't playing songs that was on the radio all the time. You guys had hit after hit after hit. I mean, 12 platinum albums. Is that right? The 12 platinum albums? That's huge.
Something like that. I
Yeah.
lost count.
Yeah, another one. Put it on the wall, whatever.
Touche. My introduction to you guys was, we used to have a radio station in here called CJCH. It was on the AM dial. And every night, like clockwork, I'd be going to bed and have it on, and they would play, and you might go, what? I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but probably my favorite Triumph song, which is Say Goodbye. That's the one, the only one they used to play. And I remember myself and a buddy of mine were like, we got to find out more about this band. We went out, we found Allied Forces. I played it to death. I mean, I had vinyl, I bent it, I scratched 3 or 4 copies, and then started seeing some videos of you guys live with that production that was just like, these guys are unreal, which might have been why you kept the 3-piece, right? Because add a 4th guy, maybe that production goes down a little bit. But talk to me about, and I want to get into what you're doing now, but just talk to me about, you know, that, because I mean, if you guys went out and you didn't have that going on, everybody would be like, what's up with these guys? And I mean, you always brought it musically, but that production was just, for a Canadian band, for any band really, but for a Canadian band, was unreal.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of that came from Gil, the drummer. His conception of the band from the get-go was that it was going to be, you know, larger than life, lots of production, flash pots going off, and laser lights and cop car lights, and, you know, strobes, and he just wanted to do it up. And you know, when there would be reviewers and they would say, well, it was like Kiss without makeup, Gil would be happy. He would say, like, yeah, you know, that's what I want to be, like, you know, a crazy production. Now, I mean, having said that, there were a lot of things that happened in Triumph's career where, like, we played outdoor shows in the daylight with no production, you know, and we did fine. Like, you know, there's a lot of people that said we kind of stole the day at the Oz Festival in '83.
Yep.
We played in the middle of the
that.
afternoon, you know. Everybody was tired and they'd already done their drugs in the morning, and they were saving the rest of their drugs for Van Halen later on in the night. You know, so it was just, that was a tough gig, but you know, we made a DVD out of it, and you know, lots of people said no, that band could play. They didn't need the lights and the production, but the philosophy within the band was, well, we don't need it, but we want it, you know.
Right.
We want as much of it as we can possibly have, you know. And I mean, in some ways it was limiting. For example, you know, you'd go out and you'd have all these trucks and truck drivers and mouths to feed, and buses and all these gaffers and, you know, production guys. And eventually you had to have a licensed pyrotechnician and all of that stuff, you know. So it got to the point where it was a pretty large kind of traveling circus. But yeah, you know, I think Gil felt naked if he didn't have the, you know, the drum riser that could hydraulically rise 20 feet in the air and shoot smoke out its ass, and, you know, he loved that stuff. So that was the nature of the band. I mean, all the big rock bands, the touring, like Rush would be a good example, but I mean, Van Halen, Genesis, they all had big shows. But with pride, I'm going to say this: when the Jacksons were looking for production, they saw Triumph at a gig in Arizona. The brothers came and saw us, and they said, "That's the production we want." And so they literally, when the Jackson 5 went out, they took out the same production that Triumph had, same trusses, same lights, hired the same C Factor, same guys, took the same tour out. So that was a nice sort of vote of, okay, we knew what we were doing, you know.
We've impressed the Jacksons. That'll do, Pig. Yeah. I wanted to ask another question too, because I was a little surprised today, because I was doing, and we don't usually do this, but I'm going to be honest, Rik, you're a hero of ours. You really are. And not just because the amount of times the Triumph played Halifax, but everything I've read, seen interviews with you, you're just you're a humble human being, you know what I mean? And we appreciate you coming on to our show here. I mean, we're just a startup company here in Halifax with our little internet, you know, trying to avoid COVID madness, but we appreciate you coming on the show. But I was reading today about your Gibsons, that you're playing a lot of Gibson now. Now, I always remember you playing Yamaha.
Yes. Yeah, I had a Yamaha deal. I think I was the longest running endorsing artist that they ever had.
Wow.
So from about 83, 84 to about 2004, 2005 maybe. And, you know, I won't go into a lot of detail. I'll just say this. There was a Canadian guy that took over the sort of the A&R rep position in Yamaha Canada. And the guy that I really liked that I'd known for years, Alan McPherson, he'd moved to LA with his family and he'd sort of moved into the Yamaha tech side of the company. So he was no longer the guitar guy. So it didn't have the same kind of like family buds kind of vibe. I didn't feel it with the new guy. Okay. And that was right around when Triumph was starting to talk about having a reunion, and Gibson had always sort of been, you know, asking. Like I would from time to time get, and it was lovely. I would get people asking, "Hey, are you interested?" And I would say, "No, I'm a Yamaha guy, and I'm perfectly happy."
Wow.
But anyways, the Gibson guy, and the other thing was, and this is a sort of a weird thing about it, but I had started playing a Godin guitar when I was doing acoustic gigs and my own gigs, and I really liked the Godin product. I thought it was really good, and it was Canadian. And so when I talked to Gibson, they were talking to a guy who actually, it was called Garrison Guitars, and I think they were out of Newfoundland. Okay. And they were thinking they were going to make a deal with them, and I was thinking, well, you know, I'm a little later in life now, but I prefer to be doing business with a Canadian company and helping promote Canadian stuff, as opposed to. But of course, Gibson, big name, and they got the money, and they're thinking about buying this guy's smaller acoustic company, and I think they even did because they wanted his technology and stuff. Right. He was doing some things with carbon fiber bracing and stuff like that. Anyhow, long story short, it all kind of fell through. Gibson gave me guitars, and I went out and did the Triumph shows, and so now I had Les Pauls and double necks, and it was great. Their acoustics never really worked out, and then I went to Godin, and then I went, you know, I think I'm just gonna see if Godin wants to give me a couple of electrics, and you know, so I'll just be playing Godins more than. But now I don't have to play anything. I'm not locked in, and even with Yamaha, you weren't locked in. You didn't have to play them. But I always felt like there was a kind of a, if you're playing something and some kid comes to an arena and sees you, they should be able to go to the store and buy that guitar. Yeah. You know, you shouldn't make them so customized that they're not, you know, available. Although they did have a custom shop, and I did get some nice guitars that were custom made. But by the end of things, like that gig that you saw in Halifax with the Sport of Kings tour, I would have been playing like that would have been a stock RGX guitar. Yeah, I might have changed the electronics a little bit, but yeah.
Wow.
So before we started recording, you got a lot on the go. I saw some masterclass things that you're doing. You were talking about your back catalog being reissued. You're talking about a Triumph DVD coming out. Let's go. Okay, Rik, let's promote you. What's going on right now with you? And it's a lot.
Yes. So there was this company called Roundhill in the States that had bought the Triumph catalog and put it out. And then they said, well, you know, like, and I don't really participate in the Triumph stuff on a business level anymore. I'm friends with the guys and everything's cool. But, you know, when I left that band, I kind of signed out and was no longer a partner in the business. But the guy that runs Roundhill, Josh Grucy, I think he said, well, we better, you know, chuck a bone in Emmett's direction. Let's see if he wants to do his catalog. And I went, yeah, sure, that's great. It'll save my kids having to inherit a mess of copyright that they have no idea how to administrate. So I went, yeah, great. So the 13 albums, and they go, we're going to put them all out for digital downloading and streaming on your birthday this year in July. And I went, well, guys, I'm not sure that's a great idea. One of those is a Christmas record. I don't think we should be putting on a Christmas record in July. So they did 11 of them, and yeah. So and that's been going great. And you know, I've never really chased the whole idea of streaming and digital download. Like, yes, you could get them off of my website, but I wasn't, you know, chasing around trying to make sure that I had iTunes deals and Spotify and Pandora and all of the stuff. So, you know, now Roundhill's doing it, and my wife goes, "Finally, I can add some of your songs to my Spotify playlists." And I go, "Yeah, okay, great." You know, fine, great. And meanwhile, I had done my own recording. I have a studio in my basement here, and I'd done 18 tunes that were voice and guitar, like an old Bob Dylan record that I had from the 60s.
Nice.
I wanted to do something that was just voice and guitar. So I did 18 of those. And then, you know, being Rik Emmett and being Tangent Man, I had 6 jazz guitar pieces too. So 24 things that I put out for download off of my site, rikemmett.com. And I called it Folk Songs for the Farewell Bonfire. Because I was thinking, maybe it'll be the last thing I ever do.
Oh, stop it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, the way things have been going, it's not. Like, but I thought I was retiring. And then what's happened is it's become fairly evident to me. Retiring is an absolutely fabulous career move.
You're busier now than you ever had been. Well, I listened to a song today that, and I hadn't heard this before. You called it Resolution 9, is that right? Resolution 9?
Yep, Res 9, yeah.
Res 9. Oh my God. There was this one song I listened to called I Sing. Oh my God, Rik, it's beautiful stuff. You know,
thank you. I'm very proud of that record. That was a weird little thing. It was like a one-off where this guy out of Pittsburgh, Jim Patulski, was kind of doing some A&R work for Mascot, label out of Amsterdam. I think it's Amsterdam. Anyhow, and so he said, I think I can get you a nice sizable budget. You can do a for real, full-on rock record, you know, old school if you want. And I went, it sounds great to me. And he was big on, well, you got to get guests. So Lifeson played some guitar on it. James Labrie from Dream Theater sang on a few things. He sings on that I Sing tune.
Right.
And but I didn't want to spread that too thin. I did get the Triumph guys. Gil and Mike played on one song called Grand Parade.
Oh, cool.
That's at the end of the record. In the same way that Suitcase Blues kind of functioned as a PS on Just a Game album, that Res 9 record's got this thing called Grand Parade, which is at the end of it. And it felt like it really came full circle with the Triumph guys to have them on there. But I'm proud of that record. I delivered the record, they put it out, and they sold about, I think, 11,000, 12,000 units in the first 5 or 6 weeks. And I thought, oh, great, now that'll really kick in. And it was like they kind of gave up. They pulled the plug, and they didn't really want to market it and push it. And then the guy gets back to me and says, yeah, I know the contract we made. I'm supposed to give you X amount of dollars for the next record, but, clearly I'm not going to be in a position to give you that. How about if you get half that? And I said, how about we just call it quits? How about, you just, we tear up the contract and, that. I said, I gave you a great record, and I'm proud of that record, and it'll stand the test of time.
I believe so.
I think, because I think the songwriting was good, and the playing on it was great. Paul DeLong played drums, and Dave Dunlop played, like that tune I Sing you mentioned. He plays the guitar solo on that. I didn't even play that because he played so good that I kind of went, why would I want to have an ego trip if every song has to be me? I go, no, you've killed it. That's fine. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I read another article today and I don't remember which magazine it was, and the exact quote is this now, Rik. I'm going to check this out. He's his own worst enemy. He's one of the only guitarists out there who may be too talented for his own damn good. What the hell does that mean? I was like, oh my God, how can you say that about Rik Emmett? I didn't know what context he meant it in. Yeah, well,
even if he meant it in a negative way, I kind of like it. I think it's true. I think it's true. I think that, not because I think I'm so damn talented, even though maybe I am. No, I think the way he meant it was, and you're, you know, guys that write in guitar magazines and guys that get covered in guitar magazines, they're mostly guitar players, and they're guys that have virtuoso abilities. And you know, I don't even think of myself in that league necessarily, because I have friendships with guys like Steve Morse and you know, Alex Lifeson and Steve Vai, and you know, I've met guitar players backstage like Tommy Emmanuel, who's an unbelievable musician, just an unbelievably great guitar player, you know, and an incredible human being. So you know, I know what the guys that are too talented. I know them, and I'm not in their league. But if you had Steve Morse here and he was talking in one of these little square, you know, windows on your show, Steve Morse would say, but Emmett can sing. Oh my God, if I could only sing the way that guy can sing. And so I had that card in my hand that a lot of great guitar players don't have.
Right.
And the other thing is, when I was about 10 years old and I had a guitar that my grandfather had given me, and one of the first things I did, I learned a couple of chords and I wrote a song and I played it for my mom. And my mom said, "Oh my God, Ricky, you're a genius. That's just so amazing." And it was not. It was a piece of shit. But, you know, I was 10 years old. It had 2 chords. You know what I mean? But I always had that songwriting thing that was, to me, it was an equal part. And so, you know, then you get in a band and the band's all about production and all about putting on a show. There were a lot of facets to who I was and what I did. I wrote in Guitar Player magazine. I taught at Humber College. You know, I could communicate. There's a lot of guitar players that they're not too good at, you know, talking, because they're articulate when they play. They're not articulate when they open their mouth, you know. So I think that was the point that writer was making, that it's like Emmett spreads himself way too thin in too many different directions.
Well, now you have a book of poetry coming up, for God's sakes, a book of poetry too, right?
Indeed. And you know, I'm proud of that. Like, who would have thought that at the age of 67, a guy would become a published poetry guy? And believe me, I'm not doing this because I think I'm going to make a lot of money. It's been made very clear to me that selling poetry books is like making jazz records. You know what I mean? Jazz is like 1% of the marketplace. Poetry is you know, but it was just my creative muse kind of dragged me in that direction. And I'd done a lot of lyrics for those 18 tunes. And when I started writing poetry where you didn't have the discipline of having to match meter all the time, and once you've got a first verse, now your second verse has got to be the same structures, the same rhythms, the same rhyme schemes. Like, poetry gives you a lot more freedom to be very creative. It's not like it doesn't have its own rules, and it does. But you know, I didn't observe too many of them. Yeah, well, I've had some fun. But the thing that's lovely is, you know, I write the book and I shopped it around, and ECW Press in Toronto said, and that's the people that used to do Neil Peart's books.
Right.
And they said, you know what, we think this is really good stuff. We'd love to put it out. And I went, hey, that's great. I'm honored. You know, fantastic. Great. So that's I'm going to be published Peart, you see.
When can we expect that out, Rick?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, just did all the contract and stuff. So I'm thinking a year, 14 months, you know, like they might not make it for the fall of 2021. So it might be spring line of 2022. Like, honestly, given this COVID stuff, who knows, right?
Right, right.
But yeah, they also wanted me to do a memoir. So I will also be getting into that at some point.
You mentioned
retirement's retirement. It's looking good on your retirement there, Mr.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Mr. Retirement, it never ends. You said some of a documentary too. Is that right? A documentary coming out?
This is a Triumph thing. This was Banger Films that did like Rush and Iron Maiden and Alice Cooper and ZZ Top, and these guys are, you know, they're Canadian from Toronto, but they do a lot of these kind of rockumentary things.
Right.
And so yeah, they've been putting that together, and I've seen what I think is sort of the final cut edit. They still have some animation that they're putting into, because it's going to be fun with some animation sequences that sort of get you from, A to B to C to D, and, which is kind of cool. And it's weird. It's surreal. Like when you see these things and you realize, wow, hey, Rik Emmett, this is your life. And they get footage from places that I never realized that that it existed. And yeah, and of course, it's not my story. It's their idea of the story of the career of the band. So, that's why I feel like when I get to do my own memoir, I'll get to be able to tell it from my point of view. They're telling it from the way that they see it, and that's all good. I'm fine with that, and it's quite a story. But yeah, we did a thing where Gil and Mike and I rehearsed for about 5-6 weeks. And we did 3 songs for a fan fest where these fans had come to the warehouse not thinking they were just going to get to see some clips from the movie and a Triumph museum filled with tchotchke and, old merch and things like that. And so they're watching this video clip, and then the scrim drops, and we're standing there with our guitars and our drums, and, we played them 3 songs, and they went just crazy. It was unreal.
Oh, wow.
So that was really good. And of course they had, 20 cameras from every angle. They captured this moment of the band reuniting for our, and they flew in the fans from all over the world. There were people there from Brazil and Hawaii and of course all over the States, Sweden and England, and so it was intense.
Wow. That's super cool.
Well, and it's interesting too, because we have some people that we deal with stateside that every time we bring up Canadian bands, Triumph is always the first one they reference. Always. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to know that we're not on the coattails of Rush, because usually it's Rush.
Straight up. I can't lie. I'm just like, you guys know Triumph. Like, honest to God, it's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's part of it is pockets of airplay. If people grew up, in certain markets in Texas and like Chicago was a big radio market for us, and so we would, get to do a couple of shows when we'd play there. Detroit was always really supportive, So depending on where people are from in the States, like we would never play New York City. We would always play out on Long Island, because Nassau Coliseum was a non-union building, so you can make more money, So the people that were Triumph fans on Long Island, they were crazy about the band, and this is a good little story. In I think it was '93, we played Nassau Coliseum the night after the Islanders won the Stanley Cup. So there were many folks who had stayed in the parking lot, having a trailer, whatever they call those parties, and they just kept going all through the night and into the next day, and they saw the Triumph trucks arriving and unloading, and they're going, all right, and so they stayed drunk for 48 hours. So yeah.
Wow. Mr. Levine must have donned an Islanders jersey that night, did he?
Oh, of course he did. Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
Mike had the greatest collection. Every hockey town we would go into, Mike would talk to the promoter and say, yeah, I think for the encore, at least I should wear a jersey out. So, can you get me one from the gift shop? So he had a great collection for sure. But I think the one he wore the most was the St. Louis Blues, because it had the music note on it, right?
Right.
But,
right. Yeah.
He had them from every major market, and that's and the lovely thing about that is, like even after I left the band, I would go and play my own gig in a place like Houston, which didn't even have it had the next level down hockey team. The Arrows were but somebody would come and bring me a jersey.
Aww.
Like, hey Rick, we got you a jersey for the Houston Arrows. I go, okay, great. I'll never wear that. Thank you.
You did your jazz show. You're doing this big jazz show. I was like, okay, I'll listen.
Yeah.
Wrong guy.
How versatile are you though, really? I mean, you left that band. I mean, it was a monster rock band for inspired so many of us, to be honest, Rik. So many, but musicians, probably the next generation down. But then you go off and you do like a jazz classical thing, and then you do a duo, then you do a trio, and then you do poetry. I mean, it just says a lot about your character that you're obviously have a lot on your own personal bucket list that you wanted to get out, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I feel like I have been able to. That's one of the things that's kind of satisfying at this point. That I feel like I did get to do all of the things that I wanted to do, and it wasn't about money. It was about satisfying an artistic kind of desire to try and do things that I knew jazz records wouldn't sell, and I would make a rock record every now and then. And of course, throughout it, I could always go out and play the summer shed shows or the festivals or whatever, and take a rock band out and do the Triumph evergreen hits, and I did that too. I never lost that part of who I was. And if you were to ask me, I would say, look, the umbrella over all of this is I'm a rock guy. I'm a rock guitar player. That's who I am. But all of these other things, they fall under the umbrella because I was, I'll walk you through a little thing real quick. February 9, 1964, I'm 10 years old. The Beatles play the Ed Sullivan Show, and the world changes. And now everybody wants to be a guitar player in a rock band. But soon after that, I'm starting to just the guys that I hang out with, and I go to high school, and there's guys that they're listening to like John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, and they're listening to the Chicago Blues and Paul Butterfield Blues Band and Mike Bloomfield, and so I'm getting exposed to like Clapton in his early stages, and then that's leading me to Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, and now before you know it, here comes Zeppelin, here comes Jimi Hendrix. Now Clapton is in Cream. So now this whole thing of guitar heroes and then English progressive bands, and Steve Howe of Yes became a huge role model for me because he'd be playing classical guitar, but then he'd be playing like a rock on a jazz guitar, and then he'd be playing some sort of a Portuguese vihuela, it was like, all right, this guy, that's the kind of career I want. I want to be a guy like that, So Triumph wasn't quite the progressive kind of band I would have liked to have maybe landed in, but the progressive side of Triumph was me kind of going, come on guys, let's try this, So I was happy to play blues-based rock, and I think I was pretty good at it.
Yep.
And I could have just done that, but you only get one life, and I wanted to make sure that I did the things, I took on the challenges that I felt like I wanted to take a crack at, whether I did them good or not, whether I was too talented for my own good, which I don't believe. Like, if I think, I won't name names, but I had a publicist that was working. I did a jazz record early on called Swing Shift, and it was all archtop stuff, swing kinds of things. And I really, I felt like artistically I'd really done something important. And so my publicist knew a guy that was a pretty high up in the jazz academic hierarchy, and she got him to listen to the record. Maybe he'd say something nice. And he came back and sort of said, yeah, it's, from a traditional point of view, he's not really, it's a little weak. Kind of like, oh shit. Okay, well, geez, that's,
You're like, where's your 12 freaking platinum albums, buddy?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Where's your Walk of Fame in
Get up under
Canada?
the laser lights and see how good you do.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I have a
exactly.
perma tan now from freaking 18 million ACLs in the back of my head. Holy God.
So we promised her we'd be respectful of your time. And as a non-guitar player drummer, all I can say is, having seen you play a bunch of times, haven't had the pleasure to open for you way back when in Halifax, you always look like you're having the most fun of anybody in the room. You're always smiling. You're always playing $1 million. It's just, and one of the things, and a friend of mine brought this up, I can't remember it was the Thunder 7 tour or the Sport of Kings, but they said, somebody said Rik had the flu at that show, and I don't know if you would even remember that, but they said how well you sang for being a sick guy. So those are I guess the types of memories people have of you out here.
Well, I appreciate that, and I mean, my philosophy, my approach was always that it was very much like being a pro athlete, that it didn't matter if you were sick or not. You know, you had a job to do, you had a gig, and I was not, you know, the kind of guy that stayed up after the gig, going and smoking dope and getting drunk, and like I would go back to the hotel and I would maybe do a little bit of writing, a little bit of practicing. I'd go to sleep. I'd make sure that I got my sleep, that my diet was good, because you know, if I was going to prioritize my life, I would always have put my family first. My family was the most important thing in my life, and so that was the reason I joined Triumph, was so that I could move out with my girlfriend and get married, and you know, eventually Triumph was starting to do good. Great, we got enough money, we can start having kids, and we had 4 of them, you know. So, and then, you know, my career was going good enough I could put my kids all through school and pay for college. And that was the thing that mattered to me more than whether or not I had fame and fortune. It was nice to have it. It was a lovely thing, but it's not what I was chasing. So my attitude about being in the band was not the whole fame and fortune thing. It was more about, am I putting on a great show, you know? And, you know, you kind of nailed it. Was I having fun? Like, to get out on a stage in front of an audience and have the audience, especially Triumph audiences, I mean, everybody be standing up on their chairs from the first salvo of flash pots. You know, everybody was into it. Yeah. And well, the energy was always so good, even if you didn't feel good physically. You know, I'll tell you a story. One time we're playing Maple Leaf Gardens, we're doing 2 nights. On the first night, we do a thing where we start off and we're on these racks that are above the amp stacks, and then there's these sort of vanity ramps we can run down and go right out to the crowd, and then the crew moves the vanity ramps off. So we go running down, and Levine and I'd come to the front, and the audience would go crazy, and then we peel off and go out to the outsides and climb these little staircases to be on the tops of the monitors. So it was like a set piece. The lights would be set so that we'd be really, really wide, and there'd be these big scenes from the lights and shit. So I'm going up the stairs, and I trip. I catch a toe, I trip, I fall down. I bark my shins against the metal edge, like it's all aluminum stuff. So the stairs are made out of aluminum. I cut right through the skin on my shin bones, and I'm bleeding into my socks under my pants, right? But I'm up there going, "Arr!" You know? So it's like Kurt Schilling. You remember when he was the Red Sox, when he was the bloody sock, and he's like, "I'm not going to stop. I got to pitch." Like, yeah. So I had bloody socks after that, but you know, I didn't stop rocking.
That's awesome. It's true though. You have a sense of obligation, a duty. Sean and I were playing a band probably when the same time you were playing here in for that live show. We had a car accident. You know, I had a broken nose. The singer's broken arm. He had broken sunglasses. But I had all this Kleenex up my nose. Like my nose wouldn't stop bleeding on stage. It's like, oh, I walked around circles, and I think I had a concussion. But you got to do it because people have paid to see you. You know, and you deserve the best show, right? That's crazy.
Plus, you owe it to the guys that you're with too, right? Like there's that thing. It's like, you know, that again. I come back to the sports analogy. It's like, you know, you can't cancel the gig because you know the other guys, you know, they're healthy. They want to play. So you go, okay, suck it up. You know?
That's right. You can't let down the team. Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Mr. Emmett, sir, I personally want to thank you. I got to apologize for that faux pas from 20 some odd years ago. So that's off my chest. I said I'm already got to do that. But so nice chatting to you. You look like $1 million.
I know.
Yeah.
Full head of hair on him. Jesus.
Oh, I don't know about that, boys. It's all white. I got this little, you know, chunk that hasn't changed, but everything else is all white now. And I was I had so much stress about a year and a half ago. It was coming out in clumps. So it's growing back in, but it's like baby hair. It's so soft. And I think, oh, this is what it's like to get old, you know. Plus, if I let my beard grow out, my beard is completely white. Because I did that once.
I get it.
I had some time off and I didn't shave, and then I went and played some gigs in the States. And the first, I come off the plane and the promoter sees me. He goes, "What the hell happened to you?" Okay, I'll shave. I'll shave.
Just for men, Mr. Emmett. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Rick, thank you so much for being on
sir.
our show. Listen, I can promise you we're going to send you one of our cool mugs. We'll get Rick, your agent there, to get a little address. We'll get you one of our cool Barstools and Bandtalk.
Beautiful.
We thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. It's been fun.
And
Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for
Okay,
still being
bye-bye.
really humble after all these years. That's awesome. Peace out.